Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the tank review on the Object 120, which is Russia's first tier 5 premium tank. And it is a very big tank with a very big turret and an even bigger gun. This must be one of the longest guns in the game, just rivaled by the, hash launching howitzer of the FV 4005 from the British. But the question is this tank worth it? How does it perform and what can it do in battle? How to use it, how to counter it if you are in the enemy team, because currently this vehicle gets spammed out a lot, and so on. So a full rundown on the statistics, many tips and tricks, also some ace tanker gameplay in the background. Let's begin with the armor. So, and we have not a lot, 30 millimeters. 30 millimeters at most, that is not a lot. And while there is a lot of angling going on, even AAAs, even 40mm Bofors, if they just aim for the flat parts, have no problem penetrating you. Same goes for the turret. The sight is just 15mm, so that causes over penetrations by German APHE. The rest still will arm, except for this 10mm rear, and also the 10mm roof and this front here. And especially with this part here, that causes hull break from 120mm HE shells if you splash down on the turret front. And also heat shells will often hull break you. But it's not very consistent, so that's everything that you need to know. It's strange, it's not very consistent. Sometimes you can eat multiple shells without receiving too much damage. The toughest armor, by the way, is the gun mantle with 100mm, and even that you will penetrate relatively easily at that battle rating of 7.7. The X-ray reveals that we have the engine and the transmission in the front, together with the fuel tanks here nearly in the middle of the tank, with the driver and the gunner on the right hand side, the commander together with the loader on the left hand side. Furthermore, we see a lot of ammunition. We see here this ammunition ring in the back of the turret, so if you want to ammo rack this tank, shoot either here or here. But this one is easier to hit, even from the front, despite the massive gun breech and the barrel of this massive 152mm M69 cannon. So the most you get always ammo racked is here, those 3 shells or propellant charges, and in order to remove them you also have to remove them before, so take out 6 of your shells, because the 7th here is registered as being already in the breach. So there's that. The vehicle is huge, it is not very armored, even air attacks with 20mm AP shells and upwards will do a lot of damage. And the thing about this vehicle is all about the gun and its autoloading mechanism. Yes, you heard that right, this premium tank has an autoloader that always reloads within 10 seconds. And while it is interruptible once you are on fire and sometimes not, so again very unpredictable, in the 100 battles that I've played it, this gun has proven itself. The rest of the vehicle is usable, but that's about it. Never choose a fair firefight and try to use this vehicle in a long-range engagement and always on your terms and surprise the enemy. Also, this vehicle has no stabilizer. Now let's talk about the mobility, and as we can see we have the weakest engine with just 480 horsepower, but also for the lightest tank in this specific comparison with 26.8 tons. So it's not really a light tank despite the armor, and more of a medium tank. Specific horsepower to ton ratio is just under 18, and that's actually not that bad, so you are faster in this respect than the M48A1. And also top speed wise, with 64 kilometers an hour, you're the joint second fastest with the KPZ70, just after the Leopard 1. Your reverse speed is just a ditch above average with -15, and you have neutral steering, which is not that common for Russian vehicles. So there is that. How does this actually go into practice? Well, even uphills, for example, on the Fulda Gap map, I often sustain over 35 kilometers an hour, which is good in real battle performance. In a straight line, you actually can go over 50. Hard terrain, you see your top speed with 64. When you are relatively slow, so under 20 kilometers an hour, you are more sluggish than you would think. So it seems like the ground pressure is relatively high, and that's a little bit disappointing. We will see later on how this also is not so great with the rest of the gun handling stats. So the maneuverability is good for a Russian vehicle, and also the mobility is very nice. So in conjunction with the armor, that automatically means you need to get into position very early on, and you must not be intercepted by some random shot or making yourself vulnerable for a certain amount of time. And it's not that easy to stay in cover with this gun in particular that sticks out of buildings if you don't want it. So always keep that in mind. So the vehicle and the gun, they are just massive. And it's very counterintuitive to think about this vehicle having so little armor. So let's have a quick look at then the actual selling point of the tank, which is the gun. We have here a 152mm M69 gun, which caliber wise is joined best with the Object 268 and also the KPZ-70. And overall, the stats of the Object 120 are between the Object 268 and the KPZ-70. And well, it also follows a trend when we look at the actual overall stat behavior, that it gets better and better on the Object 120 compared to the Object 268, but we have the same caliber. Same goes to a certain degree between the FV 4004 Conway and the Chieftain Mark 10. So if you want to have kind of the synergy between those tanks. The reload is something special. 10 seconds is really fast for a 152mm, especially because we have an autoloader. Same as the KPZ-70. And like the KPZ-70, the reload of the reload system does not depend on your crew skills. So you always have 10 seconds. It is kind of interruptible sometimes and sometimes not. It's as unreliable as trying to figure out how the hull brake mechanic works, at least for me. So, but then again, if you look at the rest of the meta, the reload is somewhere between 6 seconds and 7.7 seconds. But for tanks such as the Chieftain, Leopard, M48A1 and also the Conway, it depends on your crew skill. So most of the time you have longer reload than that. So you are looking on average around about a reload rate between 8.5 seconds on your most opponents. And to spoil you a little bit, your worst enemy is the KPZ-70 because it's faster than you and more maneuverable, better gun handling stats, autoloader that is faster than you and just can one-shot you, and also, well, has a stabilizer. So also the gun depression is not the best, and the gun elevation is also not the best. The turret rotation speed is also just half what you have on the KPZ-70, and your gun elevation speed is also average or a little bit below average, to be honest. So this is the gun, and now we have to look at the ammunition, and this is where it gets good. So the first shell type is the 152mm HE shell. That's literally its name, and it comes with a very respectable muzzle velocity of 960 meters per second, and it also features 59mm of penetration. Usually I would cheer at such an HE shell and say, well, you know, always take a few with you, and it might be useful in this situation and that situation, and usually that is true. However, in this case, we have another shell that is literally a better HE shell than this HE shell. So also with the very limited amount of ammunition, don't take any of this shell with you. Instead, use the HeatFS shell, and it is a fantastic shell. Not just has it a very high muzzle velocity for this kind of cannon with 1000 meters per second. Yes, other heat FS shells, for example of the L7 gun, are faster, but for such a big cannon that's really okay. Then also look at the TNT equivalent, 6.46 kilograms. That's more TNT equivalent as on the actual HE shell, and I will show you a few scenes just in a moment that will explain to you what I mean with this damage. Also, we have 480 millimeters of penetration. This shell literally doesn't make any prisoners, it just kills. It's very fantastic in almost any situation. However, heat has a lot of drawbacks. For example, it doesn't go through bushes, trees, fences, and certain things like that, so you can't shoot through certain things, and that has got me killed more than once. So the APDS FS shell that you also can use on this tank is a very good option indeed. And here we have the third and last shell type, which is the 152mm APDS FS shell, which is designated as an AP FSDS shell. So however you arrange the letters, you are somewhat right. Jokes aside, we have here a 12 kilogram heavy warhead with a mass velocity of 1710 meters per second. That's in the upper region of shell velocities within War Thunder. There are not many shells that are faster than that. I just guess on the T-64 the shells are faster with 1800 meters per second. And the penetration is not bad. It's right in between the stock shell of the Chieftain Mark 10 and its upgraded AP FSDS shell. And in this case we have 405 millimeters of raw penetration against flat armor and 206 at 30 degrees of impact. So we have positive normalization. That means the shell digs itself into the armor rather than somewhat bouncing upwards into the armor away from it, like APHE shells do very often. And it also retains that penetration rather well. At 2000 meters we still feature 340 millimeters of penetration. The muzzle velocity, how that affects the trajectory, makes this the perfect long range shell. But if you really know the distances and you also can lead a moving target like no other, then of course use the heat shell, also because the heat shell in comparison to the AP-FSDS shell is free. So this is another reason for the heat FS shell, that it doesn't cost 1100 silver lines unlike the APDS FS shell. And then I want to feature the scenes which I want to demonstrate to you the explosive ridiculousness of the heat FS shell. My first customer is a Panther II, and please watch closely how he dies. I hit the turret front with heat FS. Normally a Panther II can shrug that off at least the first hit, but here watch the slow motion. It acts like a big APHE shell that ignores armor, or like a very big HE shell. The second customer is here a Leopard that is just around the corner. I want to actually track him, but I noticed, hold on, I killed his driver. And yeah, the shell bounced off the upper frontal plate, exploded on the drive wheel and splashed in through the side. And then I finished him off with the second shot that looked like this. Yeah, hit the same spot and it also splashed inwards, and this time it didn't bounce, and you can see the heat beam went outside of the tank and a few shrapnels went in and detonated the already damaged armor. And then this is my favorite shot out of them all. I never thought I would see this in War Thunder once more. The heat shell bounces and actually gets triggered by the add-on armor on the turret right now, and then splashes inwards and kills the loader, the commander and the gun breech. Here in extra slow motion, there you can see the part again, and it also causes a fire. And then I had all the time in the world to finish him off with the second shot. Now the last shell stat comparison datasheet here, I promise, is the one where I compare the shells throughout the tanks in their raw datas, and we can see the HE shell has, well, kind of a mediocre penetration, but it has the highest speed out of them all for an HE shell. Then the APDS or APFSDS shell has the second highest penetration with the second highest muzzle velocity, and also the HeatFS shell has by far the highest penetration in this respect, even averaging the HeatFS shell on the Leopard 1, which was for a very long time the gold standard. Also look at the TNT equivalent and compare that to the Object 268. So the optimization in how the heat effect works between those shells is really amazing. Also we have, aside from the Leopard 1, the highest muzzle velocity for the HeatFS shell. A big drawback in my opinion is that you have no smoke shell and no smoke grenades for your tank. I hope this gets added in the future, because it is a real drawback for such a gigantic tank to not have smoke in one way, shape or another. So here we are on the second battle of El Alamein, and you can see I tried to kill this KP-70 and I, well, wasted a lot of shells. That's not the very best gameplay in this respect, but then you have to watch this shot. That was a lag spike, to be honest, and I completely splashed the entirety of the tank. Again, this is this big HE shell effect, that explosion effect. It feels like a rocket from patch 1.69, to be honest. And I was really laughing some rear parts of my body off at this moment. And this is something that you can not do with the APDSFS shell in this respect. The rest of the battle is actually just cleaning up. The enemies made one big mistake. They did not really push our A-spawn, except that one tank in the rear, but he was not decisive for the outcome of the match. So what I want to do right here is to just smash and grab, just to secure some kills before the game is over, because previous to that, up until the point that I was in position, the enemy team just suicided in the gun sights of our team. Yeah, it did not really end well for them, let's put it that way, or it ended well for them if they intended to suicide, whatever you want to call it. And so I expected to be there not too many enemy tanks left, but again, for a pure kill count, this match just gives you what you want. The highest kill count so far that I achieved with this tank in one battle. Again, please remember that KP-Z outclasses you, better turret traverse speed, better significantly faster autoloader by around about 40%, and yes, gun stabilizing system, ATGMs for really long range engagements, where this tank actually excels. And so to a certain degree I can understand the reason why Gaijin said, okay, let's put this tank to 7.7, but they punished all the tanks below that. Yes, one argument is right, you can kill this tank with every other tank, but it has the mobility most of the time to get into position and then, you know, let the gun sing. And this song makes more than just your ear bleeds. It makes your tank go boom if you are on the receiving end of this gun. The gun is really what makes this tank work. Without such a brutal shell selection, let's put it that way, the tank would just be below average. In a nutshell, this is another kind of compression problematic tank. It has no place at ultra top tier, and to be honest, if the reload would be a bit faster, if the turret traverse would be a bit faster, if this tank would have a gun stabilizer, and if there wouldn't be the MBT-70/Kampfpanzer 70, this tank would be completely out of control. But with those tanks, it had an argument to get down to 7.7, still being able to face those tanks and more than capable of taking them out, you know, shell wise or gun wise. but really not being able to compete with them in the mobility warfare aspect. So yeah, what I wanted to show you in this battle is just to be patient, to flank around, and yeah, to also third person aim. And that was an easy hull break, let's put it that way. I also wanted to go around to get the second Falcon, but that fell victim to the KP-70 on my team. And yes, also KP-70s are your rivals in getting kills. The big drawback of the KP-Z is that it doesn't have any kind of solid shot or APDS, APFSDS shell when it's stocked. And this is what I was talking about. This Type 74 that I one-shotted again through the splash damage rather than the actual penetration damage shot me obviously with APDS, and that Tempest had no AP belt loaded. I noticed that as well. So the Type 74 shot through my tank with APDS and didn't hit my ammunition, so it did literally no damage whatsoever. So sometimes it's even thinkable of, if you cannot avoid getting shot at, to present your broadside to create overpens, especially from German APHE ammunition, or in this case from APDS, because the front of your tank will not protect you, but maybe the sheer space of your broadside. Yeah, currently I'm spawn pushing, yeah, and I'm reversing for another push, so to speak. Okay, jokes aside, this is now the cleanup phase, or the cleanup time, because there is not much else to do until to wait for the enemy aircraft to get crashed or to get shot down, and maybe for the remaining guys to spawn in. And then there is that scene. I just couldn't get my gun on target on this Type 87 Japanese AA or SPAA, and so I charged him. But notice there is another spawn point. Currently the enemy spawn is also, or the enemy capture zone is also getting decapped, so to speak. And I heard this infamous 152mm gun sound that comes from the KP-Z 70 most of the time. And look at this, I reverse to have a clean shot, I mess it up, again a little bit of lag spike, and it ends up in the fuel tank of the KP-Z 70. I reload, quickly hull break the Type 87, and now this guy has smoked up, but I notice where the smoke is coming from a fire. He extinguishes it, I blindly fire into the smoke, hit his track, correct my aim, wait for the reload, and just have enough time to explain you that the fuel tank on the KP-Z absorbs a lot of damage, but if you can manage to shoot around it like this, you get a crew knockout. And this was my 6th kill. After that, nothing more happened. So at this time it's time for a shout out for Many Miles Away, and well, he helped me in testing certain things and I helped him in return a little bit, and he also motivated me to play this tank a bit more for this tank review. Nearly 100 battles. Normally 20 battles are sufficient, and I have still to research a lot of the American tanks, so this is quite some time investment. Let's hope you guys honor it with a like. So aside from that, Miles then also encouraged me to do bit more recording and to get more scenes indirectly, but still he does. So a lot of the especially Heat FS splash scenes that I presented you were down to me recording and trying out different things that I would not really recommend. Normally I would say use the AP FSDS shell because of all the advantages, and that's it. I did not expect that Heat FS to have such a splash, because I also didn't see that when I tried out the Heat FS on the Object 268, which has a bit more high explosive filling but is less optimized in terms of pure penetration, and it also didn't have this splash when I tested it. So retesting it in actual battle is something that you can thank Many Miles Away for. And that's the end of the match, so let's have a quick look at the post-battle results. Now in this battle I guess I never used any kind of APFSTS shell up until the last 3 shots or 4 shots, and that means out of the 39,000 silver lines that I earned, it's 35,000 silver lines pure profit. Also 6,568 research points. And you can see, mark of distinction, I played this tank quite some bit. First in team with 1,241 score points, because this happens now more often thanks to the reduction of planes around in the battles. That's it for me today with the tank review on the Object 120, a tank that has a very big gun with very nasty shells, which is the selling point of this tank. And on up tier you get outplayed most of the time by the KP-70 that denies you getting into the flanking position very early on. They just swarm you, they one-shot you, and they are in every respect better than you. So yeah, in an up tier it's not that nice, but you still can penetrate them if you have the first shot on them. In a down tier it's a little bit more seal clubby, at least firepower wise. You must deny the enemy the shot at you. That's the whole trick in the Object 120. So you can look at it as a very fat and slower super Hellcat with a very super gun. So, and that's my final verdict. If this tank is worth it, I'd say it's not the worst grinder that I have seen so far, but it's up to you if you think that the price of this tank is worth it. But again, it's not bad. It's certainly not bad. And well then, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Don't forget to give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.